Welcome to the Detroit Lions Morning Rounds. I'm Jimmy Liao. I've been a lifelong Lions fan for multiple decades. I've watched every game of Matthew Stafford's career over the past 12 years, so I feel like I have some pretty good knowledge about the pros and cons of him. So what are the LA Rams getting with Matthew Stafford? Let's first talk about his injury history, of which it's been significant the past 3 years. Prior to the past 3 years, he was an Iron Man for multiple years straight, about 7 years straight, where he did not have any major injuries and started every game. However, starting in 2018, there were issues. He had a back injury in 2018, which did not cause him to miss any games. However, his play was poor that year. It was the worst year of his career, in my opinion. He did not look good, not very many deep throws, just did not look comfortable all year. That was also the last year of Jim Bob Cooter's offense, so there was some question, is this a Jim Bob Cooter issue? Is this a Matthew Stafford issue? Based on his poor play, do we need to find another quarterback going forward? So there were a lot of questions going into that offseason. Turns out he likely had a transverse process fracture of his back, which is a pain-related injury. Nothing serious or structurally severe long-term, but can cause pain and can cause issues. Tony Romo had his career end because of this kind of an injury. In 2019, Stafford played great the first 8 games of the season. So it was a really nice bounce-back year for him. However, in Game 8 against the Oakland Raiders, what appeared to be an innocuous, innocent injury where he got crumpled up on from behind ended up being another back injury, which caused him to miss the rest of the year. It was that serious. Now, that was also possible another transverse process fracture of the back. Now, it was interesting what happened after that Raider game. He actually practiced the week after, and there were no indications that he was seriously hurt, and it looked like he was going to play in the next game, no issues. However, late in the week, there were some rumblings that he might miss the game. Maybe some MRI showed a fracture, maybe something showed up later in the week, but he ended up missing the game with a late scratch. The NFL actually investigated it to see if the Lions were doing shenanigans with the injury report. It was that late. But he ended up missing the rest of the year. I think part of it was due to the fact that the Lions were out of the playoff chase and potentially in tank mode at that point. So it didn't make much sense for Stafford to come back, potentially risk further injury, potentially play poorly, and the team maybe just wanted to go all in on the next season. So in 2020, his back seemed fine. It looked like he recovered fully from his back. However, he did have multiple minor injuries throughout the year. He had a right thumb sprain, likely of the ulnar collateral ligament. Nothing serious there. He actually played just fine after the sprain. A little bit of taping there. He was able to make all the throws, no limitations. He had what was likely a mild concussion also during the year. Now, he was never officially diagnosed with a concussion, but on video analysis, it was pretty obvious that there was likely a concussion going on. Now, you can have a concussion without getting formally diagnosed with one, because in order to get formally diagnosed, you have to either fail a concussion examination or you need to self-report concussion symptoms. And apparently neither of those happened, which is a very likely possibility if it's a mild concussion and you recover quickly. Another injury he had was a rib cartilage injury caused from somebody tackling him from behind again, a sort of a crumple injury. It was either an injury from a twisting motion or because he landed on the ball. But that cartilage injury, either a contusion or a sprain, nothing too serious there. He was able to play through it for the most part, no issues. He also had an ankle sprain late in the season. It was a mild lower ankle sprain. It was not a high ankle sprain, which is a more serious issue. It was a low ankle sprain that caused him to miss most of the Bucks game. However, he returned the very next week and looked totally fine with his movement. So no concerns long-term there. As far as all these 4 injuries in 2020, the most concerning one to me long-term would be the concussion. You don't want to start stacking up concussions because that can lead to voluntary early retirement or having to miss multiple games anytime you get a concussion. The other 3 injuries, the thumb, the rib, the ankle, no concern long-term there. So going forward, if you're a Rams fan, the main concern I have is whether he's getting a little bit more fragile with his spine, with his back injuries, if there's going to be any recurrence of that. His mobility has never been great. He's never been very good at avoiding hits. So anytime he gets hit, even if it seems like a innocuous hit, you do have to be a little bit concerned if he's going to have a recurrence of a back injury. All right, so the next question is, what's the scouting report on Matthew Stafford? What can the Rams expect from Matthew Stafford? Now, again, I've watched every game of his for 12 years. So after watching every game, and not just highlights, you do see some of the warts that occur in a quarterback. So we'll talk about that. Now, the strengths, the pros of Stafford is he's excellent at line of sight throws. He's excellent at these laser shots into what we call Stafford windows, where he can just fire things through multiple defenders and put it in a tight window. He's not as great at drop in the bucket throws, which is what you see a lot from Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, where they're able to loft a pass over a defender's head to a covered wide receiver, but put it in a place where the receiver can make a play on the ball. And even if the receiver is covered, you can get a big play. Stafford's not quite as great at those kind of throws. Now, the main cons of Stafford, his greatest weakness is his feet. He doesn't have quick feet. He's not able to avoid pressure very well. So he needs a clean pocket. He needs a pretty decent offensive line in order to function. He's not great with a messy pocket with guys at his feet. Any kind of interior pressure is pretty disruptive to him. He's gotten much better at stepping forward in the pocket, stepping up in the pocket, and making plays. Earlier in his career, he was horrible at that. He would be sprinting to the sideline or sprinting backward to try to escape pressure, and that ended up being a disaster. He was just not fast enough or not good enough at throwing on the rung to make those plays work. But the past 5 years or so, he got a lot better at stepping up in the pocket and making plays. Now, his height is not that great. He's about 6'2", so his height as well as his strength in the pocket is why he needs a clean pocket. He's not very good when there are a bunch of people around him. He's not great at making plays and making great accurate throws when there are people close to him. So that's the main issue with him, is that he needs a clean pocket. He's not like a lot of the other quarterbacks in the league, especially a lot of the younger quarterbacks in the league who are more athletic, who are able to make plays off schedule, make plays when the initial first or second read break down and they need to get out of the pocket. He's not great at throwing on the run. If he starts running towards the sideline laterally, I, as a fan, am not hopeful that that play is going to be successful. It's almost always an incompletion or a sack. He's not an Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes who is able to throw dimes on the run to guys down the field. So if you're a Rams fan, you got to hope that the offensive line is good and is able to give him clean pockets. Now, one thing a lot of people have celebrated Stafford for over the years is his ability to make comebacks late in games, and he has been very good at that. Now, why is it that he's been able to be so good late in fourth quarters? Well, I feel it's a combination of multiple things. One is Stafford's mental mindset at that time of the game, I feel like, is different. He really lets it rip when he's from behind and he just needs to make throws. He'll throw shots down the field without thinking too much about it, and he just plays a lot better in those situations. I also feel it's a combination of the defense being a little bit softer late in games. They're more tired. The pass rush is more tired, which, as we talked about earlier, is a key factor with Stafford. If he gets pass rush, he's not great. But the pass rush is more tired. They're maybe not blitzing as much. The secondary is maybe playing a little bit softer. So all this added together allows Stafford to make comebacks. The other reason Stafford makes a lot of comebacks is he'll go long stretches earlier in the game without making enough plays. So, yeah, it's great that he makes comeback, but part of that is his fault because he's not putting up points and sustaining drives earlier in the game so that he doesn't have to make a comeback. There are just too many failures through large stretches through the second and third quarter where he's not extending drives on third and shorts. He's not able to make plays with his feet to get first downs. And this is why the offense does get bogged down just too frequently through many games. All right, so that's the main scouting report for him. If I'm playing against Stafford as a defensive coordinator, my main thing I want to do is get pressure on him, preferably interior pressure. The Vikings have played Stafford very well over the past few years with Mike Zimmer's defense. They have a very aggressive blitzing defense, a lot of double A-gap looks. And those kind of double A-gap looks, I think, really bother Stafford because those are right up the middle, and those are very concerning to him because he can't make good throws when there's somebody in his face. So either you blitz him up the A-gap or you fake blitzing up the A-gap and make Stafford think it's coming and panic and throw a quick pass. And oftentimes that ends up leading to an incompletion. So that's how I would play Stafford as a defensive coordinator. Now, the question is, where does Stafford rank in the league as far as quality of quarterback? A lot of people right now are saying he's this great quarterback, top 10 in the league. He's going to really make the Rams a big-time Super Bowl contender. And maybe that's true, but over the past 3 years or so, I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. Let's look at this past year. Where would I rank him in the league? Well, these are the guys who I think were definitely better than him last year. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Breeze, Brady. Breeze was questionable because he was hurt a lot of this past year, but definitely over the past 2 or 3 years, he's better. Here are the guys who are likely better than Stafford over the past year and right now. Justin Herbert, Matt Ryan, Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill. That's a close one, but I feel like Tannehill has played a lot better, more consistently over the past year or two. And Dak Prescott. Now, who are the guys at the same level or same tier as Stafford over the past year or so? I'd say Phillip Rivers, Baker Mayfield, although Baker Mayfield might be a little bit better than Stafford right now. Derek Carr, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow. So putting that all together, I think there are 13 or so guys who are likely or definitely better than Stafford right now. And there are maybe 6 guys or so that are about the same tier. So that puts Stafford around the 14 to 19 range in the league. So best case, he's about 14th in the league. Now, does that mean he can't get into the top 10? No, he definitely can play at a top 10 level. He's probably never going to get into the top 7 or top 5 level. I mean, after 12 years, you are what you are. If he was going to play at a top 5 level, he would have done it already. So I would say he's a good quarterback, but over the past 2-3 years or so, he's average ranked at best in the league, and at worst, he's around the 19-20 range. Now, going forward, we'll see how things go. We'll see how much of it was due to the offensive scheme, due to the team around him, and how much of it was due to Stafford. Now, I love Sean McVay's offense. I love it. It's super creative. I loved watching Jared Goff's in the offense. There's a lot of change in tempo, a lot of really creative plays. So we'll see how Stafford does. We'll see how he thrives in that kind of system. If he plays great, then maybe Stafford was never the issue with the Lions. But I think what Rams fans and the Rams team might find is Stafford is good, but not great. There are going to be a lot of stretches during games where he's just not making plays. So we'll see how things go. Next question is, why did Stafford want out of Detroit after 12 years? Well, there are three main possibilities. One is the coaches, one is the ownership, and the other is just the location. It's not the coaches, because Stafford wanted out even after Patricia and Bob Quinn were fired. So he didn't even care who the new coach and GM were going to be. He said he wanted out regardless. So process of elimination, that means very likely there was either some kind of rift with the ownership. Either the ownership didn't like him or he didn't like the ownership, or he was just tired of Michigan, the state of Michigan, or the Midwest. Now, there were some off-the-field statements that suggested that it could be either of those two issues. First of all, with Matthew Stafford, he did go a little bit out of character. He penned an article talking about white privilege and systemic racism. These are things he never used to delve into. So these are pretty divisive topics. And we know the ownership in the past was not in favor of players kneeling for the anthem. And I believe Stafford knelt for the anthem the entire year. The only anthem I saw the whole year was Thanksgiving, and he knelt for that. So we don't know what Sheila Hamp's stance is on it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's the same as her mom, Martha Ford. So maybe the ownership was just not too happy with Stafford's off-the-field stance with various political statements. The other issue was Kelly Stafford, who showed a lot more negativity on social media over the past few months. A lot of it was due to the NFL's handling of COVID. There was one famous episode where she complained about the state of Michigan and their regulations regarding COVID. So she did not seem overly happy over the past few months. So she might have been the one pushing the situation, saying, I want a fresh start, I want to get out of Michigan, go someplace else, and just get away from things and just freshen up a little bit. So either of those two things are possibilities based on reading between the lines with all the off-the-field comments from both Matthew and Kelly. Next question is, as a fan, how happy am I with the trade? Well, I'm very happy to get 2 first-round picks from the Rams. Here's one of the main reasons. It gives me 2 favorite teams over the next 2 years. The first is the Lions, and the second is whoever's playing the Rams. So I have a lot of rooting interest over the next 2 years, which makes things much more interesting throughout the year. Those 2 first-rounders are projected by many to be in the second half of the first round, maybe even very late in the first round. I mean, right now, the betting odds for the Rams to win the Super Bowl are 3rd best in the league. So those could be very late picks. But I would say, who knows? I don't think you know what's going to happen over the next 2 years. Teams can fall off a cliff fast. The Eagles won a Super Bowl in 2018. This year, they're picking 6th. The Niners were in the Super Bowl last year. This year, they finished 6-10 and are picking 12th. The Falcons were in the Super Bowl in 2017. This year, they're picking 4th. So things can come at you fast in the NFL. If there's an injury, especially with a top-heavy team like the Rams, who have a ton of money dedicated to the quarterback, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and not a whole lot of draft picks to cover up any injuries or provide depth. If there are one or two major injuries, teams can fall off a cliff, and those first rounders could be very high in the future. All right, so that's my overall trade analysis for Matthew Stafford. Feel free to leave any comments, disagreements, suggestions in the YouTube comments or on Twitter at Jimmy Liao MD. Thanks.